Well, hey everybody, and welcome to the SysAdmin Show YouTube live stream. And this is very new to me, and I really appreciate everybody who's tuning in. And we're going to get started here. I see a couple of viewers already. I don't see anybody in the chat room. This is new to me, so I don't exactly know how that works. If you're able to get into the chat room on YouTube here and start asking some questions, I'll do my best to answer whatever I can. Until then, I just want to say I'm Dustin Ribrook, the host of the SysAdmin Show, and I started the SysAdmin Show 2 years ago, but only did about 3 episodes, and then about a year later, ended up getting consistent content going out. And my whole reason behind starting this podcast was helping people get into IT, break in and get into a career that they really want to have, and also getting a community going and getting started, some connections and learning about how other people, what they're doing in IT and how their careers have progressed. And I'm just having a blast. I mean, this has been really, really fun. This last year, especially, starting to do some new kinds of episodes, getting some video captures in there with the lab episodes, being able to do some more in-depth stuff with that. Starting to get some back and forth on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on via email with a few of you, and learn some of your stories and even interview some of you has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed that process, and it just leaves me wanting more. I want to keep this conversation going. I don't want it to be one way. I know podcasts are typically mostly one way, but I want to hear from you guys, and I really want to do everything I can to help take your IT careers to the next level. So, so far, I've done 21 episodes, and a couple cool things that have happened recently is, I guess the main thing is we have reached 10,000 downloads. So that's 10,000 unique downloads for the podcast over these last 29 episodes. And that's a big number for me. I don't know why 10,000 stands out in my mind, but that's pretty huge. And I just want to thank you guys for subscribing, for listening to the content, and I really hope it's been valuable and that you're getting some useful things out of it. So until I can find out what's going on with the chat room, I see we've got 3 people watching still, but let's see here. Live chat. All messages are visible, but I don't have anybody in the chat room. Maybe you have to be logged in to Google in order to do that. I'm not exactly sure how that works. Maybe I should have figured that out ahead of time. Let's see, participants. There are no participants other than myself in the chat. So if anyone's out there and has the ability to log into Google and just say hi, just so I know that somebody could chat, that would be great. Until then, I guess I'll just keep talking like I normally do. So in lieu of the possibility, or with the possibility that no one was going to be on here, hey Sam. So it is possible to chat. Hey Roland. So I got a couple of friends in here. I really appreciate you guys tuning in and checking it out. So at least now I know that it is possible for people to chat. You probably have to be logged in with a Google account in order to chat. Is that what happened? Let's see here. Yeah, now they're participants in the chat room. So anybody else who's watching or ends up joining in, please log in and ask questions. Until then, I'm just going to start talking a little bit about how I got to where I'm at, because that's what I want for you guys. If you are not where you want to be in your IT career, and in some cases in your career at all, a lot of this kind of knowledge and these techniques transfer to echo. Just a minute. I've got an echo in the room. Okay, I think it's fixed. Will transfer to any career. It doesn't have to be IT, but my passion, my specific thing that I focus on is people with IT careers. So you have to send 1 message to the show to participate in the list. Okay, so if you guys are trying to chat, you have to send at least 1 message in, my friend says, in order to be able to text to the chat room. All right, so how did I get my start? How did I break into IT, and how could you do it too, right, is the idea. So growing up, I always loved technology. and I kind of got lucky. My parents were a little bit more forward leading. They had VCRs and televisions and then computers in the house, so I was able to play around with some of the stuff. And I had the habit of breaking most things as I was in my kind of preteen years. I would just find a screwdriver or just a knife or something and break into things, and I got myself into quite a bit of trouble. But as I got into my teens, I started fixing things, and like I started earning my keep a little bit. They found me more useful than harmful at that point. So this activity of fixing things and learning more about electronics and tinkering with stuff became encouraged. So through a lot of those years, presents were focused around those kinds of things: electronic sets, remote control cars, things that I could, like Lego Mindstorm, things that I could program. And it wasn't too long until my parents got a computer, and of course, like most people did in the 90s, we had AOL. And AOL had a passion for not working. It just would not connect. So I got to spend a lot of time trying to get AOL to work because I wanted to get online so I could chat with my friends and look things up. I mean, it was really weird. Most of the internet back then was just chatting, but there was still, I guess, a few websites to visit. And that time really helped me learn the process of debugging of, okay, if this isn't working, then what about this? What about this? How do I get this program that I want to run effectively? And I ended up kind of becoming an expert at getting AOL to work. And it wasn't too long after that that I got introduced to a TI, I think it was a TI 99 computer. This is a computer that is just a keyboard, and the computer's kind of built into the keyboard, and then it plugs into your TV. And that doesn't have any kind of operating system on it that you can use. It just gives you a programming interface. And from there, I learned how to program in BASIC. And I just had a ton of fun. And I actually modded my first game in there. You could actually load programs on from a tape drive. And so I was able, like a cassette tape, that's how they loaded programs in. And I was actually able to load on a program called Gorillas. And it's just these two gorillas on a city, and they shoot at each other. And we're able to, I was able to modify the power that the banana that the gorillas throw did to blow up the entire city. So it was like an atomic bomb in the city. And I just found that absolutely hilarious for whatever reason. So let's see if I can find it here. Here it is. All right, so this is a screenshot of gorillas from back in the day. And as you can see, it's very old 8-bit color. And I made it so that this explosion blew up the whole thing. And I just, as a probably 13, 15-year-old kid, I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And I really got a feel for what it means to not only play games, but to program them. And that was fun for me. So that got my feet in the water, and I kept going from there. So, yeah, when I eventually saved up enough money and built my own computer, and in doing so, I learned a ton about computer hardware. So I obviously had a passion for technology, but then I started to get a lot more experience with it, and it did not go well. When I put in a CD drive one time, I bent a capacitor off my motherboard, and the computer stopped working. So I had to pop the motherboard out and get out a soldering kit and solder that capacitor back on. And fortunately, the computer started working again, and I really started to get a feel for how to be careful when working with electronics. And when you get that computer open, you need to kind of have a plan and know what's going to go where, and everything from seeding a processor to making sure I have proper cooling to putting in RAM and debugging various issues. So that process really started to lay the groundwork for a career path in IT. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what A+ was, but basically I was giving myself an A+ kind of crash course in A+. Just a minute. All right. And I did get interested in PC gaming at this time, and I really had fun going to LAN parties, playing with a few kids in my high school, some various games. And I also got more interested in computer programming. So I started to dabble in C++, assembly, HTML, JavaScript, PHP, and I really mean dabble. I never got great at any of those languages, but I learned enough to be dangerous. And my favorite mod of all time was with C++ in Quake 3. So Quake 3 was one of the main games my group of friends was playing at the time. And it was right around the time that the Matrix movies came out. So bullet time, if you remember bullet time from the Matrix movies, that's when, right, Neo goes really slow and kind of leans back and dodges the bullets. Well, I really wanted that to happen in Quake 3. So I was able to go into the programming and mess with the physics of the engine to tell it that when I hit a certain button, it slows down the game engine and it basically becomes bullet time. And it was so cool that I could initiate that and then take a really carefully aimed shot at my friend, and they didn't see it coming. They were, because of the way physics works in game engines, they were experiencing bullet time too, but I was ready for it and they weren't. So I just had a lot of fun, and that took the lead of programming over gaming. Slowly, my interest in gaming became a backseat. I was doing it only to test the various mods I was doing. And really, I just wanted to tweak things. I wanted to make changes. I wanted to make my computer faster. And my main reason for doing that was to make the games play faster. But really, I got hooked on tweaking the system, on playing with the hardware and the software to improve things and to fix things. And that's where gaming started to take a back seat. And so I ended up going to college or starting college anyway, for computer science, where programming was a forefront of that. But I did not complete that degree. I ran out of money and I did not want to take out student loans. So I ended up just getting a job. And that's where I got my first real customer service experience. And that was Office Max. So just a clerk, like you would expect, right? Working in the furniture side, kind of out in with the printers and the computers, helping people answer the questions. So I quickly had to become an expert at everything that we had in the store, not just the highlighters and the paper, but that too. But right, that was a nod to my wife, who just loves office supplies for whatever reason. I'll give it to her. So I got really good with printers. I just learned every model as they came through, kind of all the ins and outs. And that helped round out what is a big part of IT, which is understanding how to support printers. And what came out of this Office Max job is I met a lot of people who were getting new computers or had computers that were broke and they needed help. And how do I help them? I got approval from my manager at Office Max that they didn't care if customers needed tech support. There was no such thing as the Geek Squad, right? Or any kind of, Office Max wasn't offering any in-home, in-store services. That was before that really became a thing. So they were fine with me. Any customers that wanted help, I could help them off hours in my own time. So I started doing that, and I basically had a little side business going where I would, if anybody needed help, I would go to their house and help them hook up or transfer files from a new computer. And let me tell you, I learned a ton. Again, this is more hands-on experience. Key to as you want to get more involved in IT is you not only need to know what you're doing. Reading books is great, but you need to get in with the problem and start fixing it. And that's where the rubber really meets the road, and you start to, it really clicks, right? Active learning. So I just got a ton of that. And as that was going through, my time at Office Max kind of fizzled out. And I started my first job in IT. And this was for a company that needed an Access database admin, somebody that could write some Access databases to help them manage some reports. And a week before I got the job, I had never used Microsoft Access. But it was through a temp agency. I was hired on through, I applied to the temp agency, and this is kind of what met the technical goals that they lined up. I said that I could figure out Access. I spent the next week crash course learning everything I could, installing Access, practicing, trying it out. And when I took the practice test they gave me, I got a perfect score. So that's not a testimony. That's not me bragging. That's just me saying that if you focus on something, even for a short while, you can get your foot in the door. So I did not know everything there was to know within a week, but I got my foot in the door, I got the job, and I then spent the rest of the time, working my way through it and figuring it out. And they were new to it too. So we started small and built up from there. And it was great. But in about 2 years, I was still doing that. And during that time, I had worked a little bit with the IT person, kind of shadowing him, because we were both kind of technical, and so he was able to show me a few things. But he left, and about 2 years in, and so it left an opening. And since I had been shadowing him and kind of knew what needed to be done to keep things running, I took over as an interim IT person, and that was awesome. I was loving it, and I actually applied to be the full-time replacement for him. But they interviewed me, and probably rightfully, they did not give me the job. I did not have anywhere near the experience I needed to really do it properly, but I thought that I did. And the new guy came in, and he was great, and I did the same thing with him. I kind of continued to learn more as it was going on. So a couple years after that, I got my first real IT tech support job, and that's where the learning began in earnest. So spent 4 years learning everything I could about networks, Mac hardware. I was working for a media company, and we had 50% Macs, so I ended up learning a lot about Mac OS and Mac hardware at the time. I was working with Server 2003, Server 2008, Exchange 2003 and 2008, and helped with a migration there. Kind of saw the differences between the two. Got introduced to VMware, which completely changed my life. Haven't looked back since. I'm a huge fan of VMware and manage it still today. I believe I was around version 2.5 when I started, somewhere in that range, 2.53. And now, I'm running 6.5 in production, and it's amazing. So I got introduced to BlackBerry, which we all know where that went, and iPhone and iPad. In the early days when they first came out, we had them, and I was starting to support them. And I just learned a ton. And that really prepped me when I was ready to move on. Didn't see any direct movement opportunities where I was, and had a growing family. So I really needed to take the next step. And so moved to my current employer. And this was 7 years ago. So I've just celebrated 7 years with my current employer. And this was just a perfect storm. It was the kind of company I wanted to work for, a privately held company. It was the size company I wanted to work for, less than 1,000 people. It was a smaller IT team. It ended up being just me and the manager, the new IT manager, who was also just recently hired for a year. And then we brought on an intern who became full-time with us. And that was the three of us for quite a while. And now we've got a fourth, and that's working out great. So there's just a small, tight-knit group that really we work well together. And during that time, I've basically replaced the entire infrastructure. So the network has all been replaced, all the switches, the phones were all replaced. The Exchange system was physical, and then it was virtualized, and then it was upgraded from 2010 to 2013. I did complete virtualization. Everything was physical, and we went complete virtualization on VMware, which was a fantastic project. I then did that same project again on new hardware 4 years later, when everything was, 4 to 5 years later, when everything was getting a little older. So I've already started replacing some of my own stuff, which is a really interesting feeling. Conference room AV, so just putting projectors and screens and TVs and everything that you need in conference rooms. Job site IT hardware. A lot of our workforce is actually remote, so managing that and building up tools and solutions for the field has been a big part of my job. During this time, we've had one acquisition. So that's actually, I did a lot of those at my previous employer, where they would actually send me out, fly me to, we owned newspapers, and they would fly me to a newspaper that we recently bought. And we'd kind of bring their network online. And I would work kind of second tier to the SysAdmin that they had doing that. And that was a pretty fun experience. But we acquired somebody, my current employer, and so we brought them online. And then we've had at least 6 construction projects where we're either rebuilding part of the building, or we're building a new building. or we're rehabbing a complete new building. So we've actually moved 2 offices. So I've had to take the data center and all the associated services from 2 offices to a new building and everything that's involved in that. And I can tell you right now, I really love what I do. And I mean, my previous 2 employment experiences were 4 years each, and it took about 4 years to get the level of knowledge I needed to move up and to kind of get antsy, to get a little bored. And that's when I knew that I needed to make a change. And just the way that my life progressed, in about that amount of time, I needed more compensation. I needed to take to get to the next level of compensation to support my growing family. And so those things really drove me. And I don't think I'd be in this situation if I didn't have, those needs driving my desire to go forward and grow and get a little bit outside of my comfort zone in some of these situations. But as I progress and where I am now, I just love what I do, love where I do it. And another thing is I am properly compensated. So it's important not only to love what you do, but don't give it away, right? Make sure you're working at a place that recognizes what you're worth. And everybody at some time or another may feel like they want more or deserve more, but go out in the market and find out, right? If you can get a job offer for more, then that means that you're potentially worth more, right? If you can't, then that means maybe you're getting paid what you're worth. That's kind of the proof, right? See what other people are making, and go on Glassdoor and in LinkedIn and see what the kind of estimated ranges are to find out if you're being properly compensated, because that's important. You don't want to feel like you're being taken advantage of, but you also don't want to be complaining about money all the time, because your budgeting shortfalls are not your company's problem, right? If you're being properly compensated, they shouldn't give you more money just because you need it, right? You need to find a way to raise your skill level and the value that you bring so that you can then be properly compensated for the new value that you're bringing. All right. Next one is the work that I do is very interesting. It's challenging, and it kind of has a great mix of, there's some things that are routine that I have to do that are just basic processes, but there's enough things that are interesting and new and exciting and that are pushing the technical limits that I'm constantly learning more and able to scratch the itch, and I'm not getting sedentary. I'm not just coasting through what I'm doing, and that's a danger. If you get comfortable, sure, it's comfortable, but you're not going to progress, and you'll be comfortable for 5, maybe 10 years, but then you're going to wonder why you're not moving forward. And by then, there's going to be a lag before when you start trying again to when you can actually move forward. So you want to take advantage of that now so that you don't have to wait till later when you maybe need the money or you're looking for a change. So my boss is super encouraging and supportive. And I've worked for a couple different people. And actually, at one point, I had almost kind of 2.5, 3 bosses, and it wasn't fun. You want to work for somebody who is a pleasure to work for, who has your back, where you're not always wondering, why they're doing what they're doing, and you just feel like they've got your back and you're supported, because you're not always going to be on the same page. You're not always going to communicate great, but in those times where communication is broken down, if you trust where they're coming from, then you can continue to perform at peak, at your peak, and to know that, nothing weird is going on. They've got your back. They're looking out for you. And it's just easier to take direction from them if that's the case. And I definitely have that where I'm at now. The team I have, I told you the 4 people total that we work with is fantastic. We just work well together. One of the guys is relatively new. He's only been with us maybe 3 months, and it's clicking, and we're all working together great, and everyone has the right customer service attitude. And that's just fantastic. I work to live. I don't live to work. So I am able, with my current position and employment and manager and all that, to have a good work-life balance. And I don't spend all my time, right, focusing on work, but I also have to go to work, right? I don't spend all my time. I don't fool around when I'm on work time, right? When I'm at work, I'm working. I am on call, so if I get calls when I'm on call, I take them and I do what needs to be done. But a key thing about being on call is my on call is not abused. So I'm not called all the time. And there were situations at my last employer where if I was looking at moving up, the sysadmin, he was getting calls all the time. He did not have a single weekend without hours of on-call support. And that's not something that I wanted to be promoted into. I didn't want that kind of lifestyle. I wanted to be able to go to work when I'm at work, get my work done, and then be able to live a life and spend some time with my family and focus on that as well. And definitely that's important to me. And yeah, that's what that's kind of the the 30-minute version of how I got to where I'm at and why I love what I do. And I guess my question to you guys is, are you satisfied with your current job or your career path? Right? Um, if there is something that about your current job, your current position, your education path, your career path that you're not satisfied with, I would love to work with you, right? I'd love to help you out in any way that I can, and maybe that just means a couple emails back and forth, but maybe that means a one-on-one engagement, and we talk about that and see if there's something that I can do and we can do together to get you on the path that you want to be on. So we're about at the 30-minute mark here. I'm a little bit past. So I want to respect everyone's time. I really, I guess I'm a little sad that we never got any questions, but I appreciate everyone who's able to join live and test the system out for me. Really appreciate everybody joining in. And I guess thanks everybody. As always, I'm interested in any feedback from you guys, good or bad. I want to do more of these. So anything that you can, any kind of feedback you can give me, what worked, what didn't, I would appreciate, so I can make it go smoother in the future. And you can send me emails, Dustin@sysadminshow.com. You can find me on Twitter @sysadminshow. And until next time, I encourage you to never stop learning.